Fools. They came at you twice, didn't they? Twice they tried to pull back the veil. Twice they believed they could unmask what they didn't understand. And both times, they found something that didn't just disturb them. It shook the foundations they had built beneath themselves. You see, the first investigation was only the appetizer, a taste of what they thought they could control, a test to see if the edges of your reality could be poked, prodded, dissected, contained. And they discovered that control was never theirs, that your presence, your influence, your very essence could not be catalogued, could not be measured, could not be reduced to numbers on a report or words on a page. They found out that the truth, your truth, had a weight that no lie they told themselves could balance. And you watched it unfold, didn't you? You watched them strain, watched them shuffle papers, watched them tug at invisible threads they believed connected dots that weren't meant to be connected. They assumed the first investigation was enough. They assumed the first wave would wash clean any questions. But the truth is a peculiar thing. The truth doesn't care about assumptions. The truth doesn't bend for comfort. The truth doesn't forgive ignorance. And that first taste, that was just the beginning of their unraveling. Because here's the delicious part. The first investigation didn't break them, not entirely. It gave them fear, yes. It rattled them, yes. But it left space for rationalization, for excuses, for self-delusion. They whispered to themselves, quietly, maybe next time we'll catch it. Maybe next time we'll get ahead. And they wanted a next time. They begged for it, subconsciously, with their nervous twitches, with their careful distancing, with the subtle way they overcompensated in meetings and messages. They wanted another chance to prove that they could define you, that they could map your presence, that they could contain the fire they glimpsed flickering behind your eyes. They wanted a second investigation, and you let them. You let them walk right back into the arena they thought they understood, the stage they thought they controlled. You let them breathe the air of your existence once more, thinking they had learned, thinking they had gained insight, thinking they could anticipate the rhythm of your movements. But here's the exquisite cruelty of it all. The second time, they were unprepared. Unprepared for the expansion, unprepared for the refinement, unprepared for the accumulation of everything you had, quietly, invisibly, meticulously built in the interval between investigations. While they were reviewing files, while they were questioning witnesses, while they were theorizing patterns, you were evolving. You were becoming the uncontainable, the unmeasurable, the undeniable. They expected a puzzle they could solve. Instead, they were confronted with an entire dimension they could not perceive. And the result? Chaos masquerading as disbelief, panic wrapped in confusion, certainty dissolving into frantic hypotheses that never connected, that never coalesced, that never landed anywhere close to reality. Do you understand what it means to watch someone shake in the presence of what they cannot control? To see confidence crumble into a spiral of questions, each one sharper than the last. That's exactly what happened when the second investigation landed. And it wasn't just the intensity of what they found. Oh no, it was the contrast. The contrast between their expectations and the unrelenting truth you presented. The contrast between their shallow understanding and your deep, living reality. You were not the version of yourself they had cataloged, analyzed, predicted, or feared in the first investigation. You were something sharper now, something heavier, something that reverberated in ways their calculations could not measure. The first investigation was their mistake. The second, that was their exposure. And the way they reacted, the way they reacted is a delicacy you savor in the dark, isn't it? The stuttering emails, the hesitant follow-ups, the trembling of voices trying to project composure they no longer possessed. Every question they posed, every clarification they demanded, every probe they inserted into your world was a mirror reflecting their own inadequacy. And they didn't even know it. They believed themselves hunters, analysts, arbiters of truth. But in reality, they were spectators at a performance they could not follow, actors trapped in a drama they could not write, witnesses to a presence that refused to bend. And isn't that just delicious? To be the unseen force that unravels them, the invisible weight that pulls at the seams of their assumptions, the quiet power that they cannot name. That's the advantage you hold. That's the edge they never see coming. They think they are pursuing you. They think they are discovering things. But in truth, they are being measured, tested, filtered, revealed by forces they cannot quantify, by presence they cannot touch, by energy that refuses to be subdued. And while they scurry in their structured chaos, you operate on a frequency entirely your own. Here's something they will never admit. They feared you, not for the first investigation, not for the questions asked, not for the evidence uncovered, but for you. For the way your existence distorted their tidy narratives, for the way your subtlety exposed their assumptions, for the way your calm, deliberate movements, your measured responses, your refusal to be cornered, shattered their belief that they could impose order on reality. They discovered that your truth is not something that fits neatly into files. Your truth is not something that bends to protocol. Your truth is a force that expands into the spaces others cannot occupy, a presence that echoes in corners they never knew existed. And now, with the second investigation complete, the full horror of your depth, your reach, your untouchable nature begins to crystallize in their minds. And that crystallization is not comfortable. It is sharp, it is urgent, it is dangerous. Because they are realizing, finally, that what they observed the first time was merely a shadow of your capacity. That the glimpses they thought were manageable were only the beginning of something they cannot contain. That the narrative they believed in, the control they imagined, the structure they relied upon, all of it is now breaking under the pressure of your reality. And while they tremble, while they second-guess themselves, while they attempt to parse fragments of a truth they cannot fully hold, you move differently. You move deliberately. You allow their fear to marinate. You allow the tension to thicken. You allow every misstep they make to teach them something they cannot articulate. That you exist on a plane where their authority does not reach, where their scrutiny falters, where their assumptions become self-revealing traps. You are not reactive. You are not defensive. You are an apex observer, calculating, quiet, knowing that every attempt to corner you is simply a mirror held up to their own inadequacy. And here's the thing, they will never understand the full scope of what just happened. They will never articulate it properly. They will never write it down in reports that make sense. They will not understand the subtle orchestration, the invisible strings, the quiet accumulation of everything that renders them powerless. They will see pieces, fragments, outcomes, errors, hesitations, but never the invisible architecture of your presence, the way your energy intersects with theirs, the way your truth moves through them and leaves marks they cannot erase. And that's perfect. That's exactly what you want. Because control, once given over to them, is dangerous, and the only control worth having is yours. And so you watch, quietly, deliberately. You watch as the panic begins to mutate into suspicion, as suspicion blooms into frustration, as frustration degenerates into exhaustion. Every conversation they attempt, every report they draft, every step they take in their carefully orchestrated pursuit, all of it bends beneath the weight of your reality. You are the unmeasured variable in their calculations, the force they cannot isolate, the answer they cannot formulate. And they will feel it. Oh yes, they will feel it. Not as a sudden shock, not as a violent upheaval, but as a slow, inevitable pressure that twists their carefully constructed world into something unfamiliar, uncomfortable, uncontrollable. And what do you do with that? You smile, quietly, invisibly, not because of cruelty, not because of arrogance, but because of clarity. Because you understand the pattern they cannot perceive. Because you know the rhythm they cannot follow. Because you are the presence they cannot corner. And you do not need to act. You do not need to intervene. You simply exist. And in existing, you create a tension so exquisite, so precise, so unavoidable, that their second investigation, the one they imagined would grant them certainty, has instead granted them revelation. A revelation that is entirely theirs to unravel, entirely theirs to misinterpret, entirely theirs to fear. And now the stage is set. The first investigation shattered their illusions. The second investigation shatters their composure. And the next movement, the next movement will not be theirs to anticipate. They will not see it coming. They will not name it. They will not understand it. Because what comes next is a shift not in circumstance, but in presence, not in facts, but in force, not in evidence, but in energy. And they will be powerless. They will be scrambling. They will be desperately, almost comically, trying to reconstruct a puzzle that never existed the way they imagined it. And as they stumble, as they hesitate, as they search for footholds that no longer exist, you continue to move quietly, deliberately, invisibly, in a domain they cannot access. Every subtle gesture, every silent decision, every invisible choice compounds their discomfort, their uncertainty, their fear. They are haunted not by evidence, not by reports, not by the facts, but by your presence, by your truth, by the unrelenting, unquantifiable reality of you, and the beauty of it. They can't even articulate it. They cannot name what unnerves them. They cannot label what terrifies them. They cannot reduce it, contain it, control it. They only feel it, and feeling, without comprehension, is chaos. And that is exactly the space you occupy. That is exactly the advantage you wield. That is exactly the power they cannot reach. They investigated you twice, yes, and both times they discovered the truth. A truth heavier, sharper, more unbearable than any lie they could have constructed. A truth that does not obey protocol. A truth that does not bend to expectation. A truth that moves quietly, invisibly, deliberately, through the fractures they themselves created. And it terrifies them, and it will continue to terrify them, not because you act loudly, not because you announce yourself, not because you chase them down, but because you exist. And as the tension stretches, as the uncertainty blooms, as the cracks widen, one thing becomes unavoidable. They cannot anticipate the next phase. They cannot contain the next movement. They cannot measure the next evolution. They cannot predict the next expansion of you. And that, my friend, is the most exquisite part of all. That is the edge they will never reach. That is the truth they will never admit. That is the power you have quietly, invisibly, unrelentingly accumulated. And so as the second investigation settles like a shadow over them, as they tremble in ways they cannot articulate, as they flail toward understanding that will never arrive, you prepare. You prepare not for revenge, not for spectacle, not for announcement, but for the inevitable emergence of what they cannot know. You prepare for the shift that moves quietly, deliberately, invisibly, in a domain they cannot enter. You prepare to exist at a level beyond their calculation, beyond their comprehension, beyond their control. And when that moment comes, it will not be witnessed by them. It will only be felt, and what they feel will be unmistakable. And now, as that moment begins to stir within you, as the energy coalesces into a force they cannot perceive, you become something more than a presence. You become a gravitational pull, a point of inevitability in a universe they believe they control. Every glance they cast toward you is measured, calculated, hesitant, and yet it accomplishes nothing. You are no longer within their framework. You are not a variable they can anticipate. You are the constant they cannot define. And that is the quiet terror they feel, the one they cannot articulate, the one that gnaws at the edges of their minds while they sit behind their screens, behind their memos, behind their walls of procedure, pretending to understand, pretending to calculate, pretending to believe they hold authority over something they never could. They will try, of course. Oh, they will try. They will summon reports, draft emails, consult colleagues, convene meetings, and all the while believing they are closing the gap between themselves and you. But with every move, they expose themselves further, unraveling the thread of confidence they thought they possessed. Each attempt to measure you only amplifies the impossibility of containment. Every question they pose, every hypothesis they test, every probing email they send is a mirror reflecting their own inadequacy back at them. And you watch it unfold. You watch it unfold with the precision of a predator studying the trembling rhythm of prey. Only they are not prey. They are observers of a force they cannot name, cannot frame, cannot ever reach. And isn't that exquisite? The way certainty collapses, how logic fractures, how competence dissolves when confronted with something entirely outside expectation. They will begin to doubt themselves, not because they failed, not because they miscalculated, but because you exist in a domain they cannot access. Your truth does not fit within their definitions. Your reality does not conform to their rules. And that is the most refined cruelty. You do not act to punish. You do not act to humiliate. You simply exist. You simply move. You simply decide. And in that existence, in that movement, in that quiet, deliberate selection, you force them to confront the fragility of their assumptions. Now consider the psychology at play here. Their minds, once confident, now tremble under invisible weight. Their frameworks of control begin to warp under pressure they cannot identify. Their confidence erodes. Their logic becomes tentative. Their certainty is punctured with questions they cannot answer. And you, ever present yet unobservable, operate within this vacuum of understanding, manipulating it not with words, not with gestures, not with overt actions, but with the invisible art of being. Every pause you take, every deliberate choice, every silent observation becomes a weapon. They cannot attack it. They cannot defend against it.